Hey there, amazing viewers. Welcome back to True Life Stories, where real experiences touch hearts and change lives. Today's story is one that will make you question everything about family loyalty, success, and what it truly means to belong. When my sister got promoted, my parents threw a champagne party with toasts and celebrations. But when I launched my own company, they cut me off completely, said I was embarrassing the family. Fast forward 7 years. She's jobless. I'm a CEO. And suddenly, they remember I exist. But here's the twist that still haunts me. It wasn't the silence that hurt most. It was the years they erased me from family photos and now want me to save the daughter they once called perfect. Before we dive into this emotional roller coaster, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. Whether you're cozied up in Tokyo, sipping coffee in Paris, or taking a break in Sydney, I want to hear from you. Your global perspectives make our community so special. And while you're at it, tell me, what would you do if the very people who disowned you suddenly came begging for help? Would you extend a hand or close the door? The choices we make in these moments define who we truly are. All right, grab your tissues and maybe something comforting to hold on to, because this story about family betrayal, personal triumph, and the painful question of forgiveness is about to begin. I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. The text from Mom just said, "Family dinner at 7, try not to be late." No explanation, no context. But it was Mom, so I threw on something decent, scraped my hair into a bun, and drove the half hour from my tiny rental in South Durham to their place like I always did, still trying, still hoping. Their house was glowing when I pulled up. Cars packed the driveway. Spilling onto the street, inside, it was loud, cheerful. Laughter spilled from the windows. I remember standing there for a second, my hand hovering over the doorknob, already feeling like a stranger in my own family home. When I walked in, nobody looked up. The dining table was dressed to impress. Linen napkins, champagne flutes, a flower arrangement big enough to block half the view. I stood near the archway while everyone lifted their glasses, Dad at the head of the table, his voice booming like some kind of Southern senator. "We're just so proud of the legacy Seraphine is building," he said. "She's everything we hoped our daughter would be." Everyone clapped. Someone even whistled. I stood there holding my purse, still in my coat. No one said my name. Not once. I sat at the far end near the door to the patio, nodding at an aunt who gave me a tight-lipped smile. Seraphine was radiant in a blue sheath dress, hair curled just right. She laughed like she'd rehearsed it. My mom leaned over, brushing something off her shoulder, whispering, and I just listened. There was a toast. There were two, actually, and a slideshow. Every photo was Seraphine in college, at work, at some conference in D.C., standing next to a man in a suit who looked like he invented Congress. There were no pictures of me, not one, even on the hallway wall, where once a photo of me at the Pinewood Auto Show used to hang. There was now a framed article about Seraphine's promotion at her marketing firm. My photo was gone, painted over maybe. I excused myself early, told them I had a shift in the morning, which was true. I was still doing freelance upholstery jobs, part-time shop work, and every weekend learning how to stitch smart sensors into seat covers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. On the way out, Dad patted my shoulder absently and said, "Don't forget to turn off the porch light." Like I still lived there, like I was just passing through the house I grew up in, where my name had become noise. 2 days later, I came back, not for dinner. I came back because I thought they deserved to know what I'd been working on. Seraphine got a promotion. I had a plan, maybe not a corner office or a LinkedIn headline, but something I built from scratch with grease on my hands and YouTube tutorials at 2 a.m. Mom was at the breakfast nook with her tablet. Dad sat across from her with the paper. I stood between them holding my folder. My hands shook a little, but I kept my voice steady. I've been working on a business, car interiors, smart textiles. I filed the LLC. I've got a prototype, and I'm applying for a local grant. I wanted you to hear it from me first. Silence. Then Mom chuckled. Oh, sweetie, you're serious. Dad didn't even look up. This is what you've been working toward. My throat dried up. I tried again. It's a real thing. I've been learning nonstop. The text there. It's practical. People want this. Mom waved her hand. Oh, Taylin, darling, we hoped you'd do something respectable. Respectable. Like Seraphine, who made ad campaigns about cereal boxes and beauty products, while I was trying to reinvent what a long-haul driver's seat could feel like after 8 hours on the road. I was stunned. But I stayed. I asked questions. I asked what they thought could be better about my pitch, how I could improve. Dad finally folded his paper and looked at me with a sigh. If you go through with this, he said, don't expect to come back asking for help. We can't carry someone who refuses to grow up. We already have one daughter we're proud of. I left without another word. The sun had just dipped under the tree line as I stepped outside. Everything smelled like cut grass and old air conditioning. I got in my truck and gripped the wheel tight, my jaw clenched, my hands cold against the cracked leather steering. The house stood quiet behind me. No one followed. No one called out. On the seat beside me was the canvas bag holding my prototype, a stitched, pressure-sensitive seat panel I'd spent 3 months getting just right. It was still warm from my lap. They hadn't even asked to see it. I didn't know it yet, but that night I became someone they'd later pretend to recognize. As I drove away, memories flooded back. Childhood snapshots that showed the complicated relationship between Seraphine and me. She was always the perfect one, but there had been moments like when she stood up for me against the neighborhood bullies in 5th grade. She wasn't entirely the villain in my story, which somehow made everything harder. I remembered my grandfather, the only one who encouraged my mechanical interest before he passed away. You've got the hands for detail work. Otalin, he used to say while I helped him fix the old lawnmower. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't build. 7 years. That's how long it took for the silence to break. The text came out of nowhere. Would love to see you, sweetheart. Family dinner Sunday. Same house, same tone as if none of it had ever happened. I didn't say yes right away. I stared at the message for 2 full days before replying with one word, sure. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the dogwood tree in the front yard had grown so wild it cast shadows across the porch like broken ribs. They'd repainted the house gray with black shutters now, not the warm cream I remembered. It looked colder, like the people inside had tried to scrub the past off the walls. Inside, Mom gave me a hug that didn't land right. Dad nodded like I was a neighbor dropping off borrowed tools. Everything smelled faintly of new carpet and lemon polish. The air was tight, but what caught me wasn't the smell. It was the wall, the hallway, the one we used to pose in front of on birthdays, the one lined with photos of first recitals, Sunday picnics, that trip to Myrtle Beach where Seraphine got sunburned so badly she couldn't walk. Now it was just her. Newer frames, white, sleek, cropped tight, Seraphine in a blazer, Seraphine with her co-workers, Seraphine laughing in front of some podium. I looked for the photo of me from senior year, standing next to my beat-up Toyota with a wrench in hand. Gone. There was a patch on the wall, faint but still visible, a square where sunlight hadn't hit in years. It looked like something had been wiped away too hard. I stepped closer. My fingers hovered. Even ghosts leave more trace than I did. Dinner was civil, polite, overcooked salmon, quinoa, steamed asparagus. Mom was into health now. Dad talked about local property taxes like it was small talk. I listened, nodding, smiling when appropriate. My phone buzzed in my pocket, my assistant reminding me of a design review in the morning. After dessert, I left early again. No hugs this time, just a drive safe from Dad. By the time I got back to my office, the sun had dipped behind the buildings, turning the glass walls golden. My office lights kicked on automatically as I walked in. Warm LEDs, modern furniture, white oak paneling. I sat at my desk, took a deep breath. There, framed behind me on the wall, was the original sketch of my first product. The pressure-responsive lumbar insert scribbled on the back of a mechanic's receipt. Below it, a magazine with my face on the cover. Headline, From Disowned to Design Powerhouse. But I wasn't smiling in the picture, and I didn't smile now. Success is funny like that. It doesn't heal what was never named. I reached for the coffee my assistant had left earlier. Still warm, steam rising. She always remembered the oat milk. And just like that, I remembered all of it. Those nights stitching fabric in the back of a borrowed van. The morning scrubbing seats at an old upholstery shop, pretending I didn't hear the guys laugh when they saw me taking notes. The way I used to park 3 blocks from hardware stores so Dad wouldn't see me buying cheap tools. Didn't matter. Once he did. He walked right past me in aisle 12. I was comparing adhesives. He looked me straight in the face and kept walking like I was invisible, like I'd never existed. I worked harder that week than I ever had in my life. That version of me, sleep-deprived, broke, running on gas station coffee and spite. She built this, not for revenge, not for applause, just to survive. Now here I was, my name on patents, my designs in commercial fleets across 4 states. And now they call. It started with another dinner. Mom insisted, just casual, no pressure. They asked polite questions. I gave polite answers. Then she said it quietly, like it was a favor, like it didn't cost her a thing. Seraphine's in between jobs right now. Her firm downsized. 4 months now. She's trying, of course. You know how competitive the market is these days. I nodded, sipped water. Sure, now it was competitive. But when I couldn't afford rent and was crashing in the back of my truck, I was just immature, unfocused, a disappointment. The gall of it still burned. She's looking, Mom added. But it's hard, really hard. And well, your company is doing so well. We thought maybe there's a way you could help her get back on her feet. I set my fork down. My hand didn't tremble. I looked at Mom. Her expression was soft, practiced. The photo wall flashed through my mind, and just like that, they remembered I existed. I agreed to meet them at a restaurant off 9th Street, somewhere neutral. Not their house, not mine, just a place in between that made it feel less personal. The private room had 1 window and too much candlelight. Mom wore lavender. Dad had on one of those quarter zips that always looked like he played tennis, even though I'd never seen him hold a racket. They both stood when I walked in, smiled. Mom hugged me with both arms. Dad touched my shoulder like he remembered where it was. I sat. They asked about my company, about the new office in Raleigh, about how many people were on the team. Now you've built something really impressive, Dad said, letting the words sit like it had taken effort. I've had help, I replied. No one builds alone. I don't think they caught the edge in that. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. I could feel them choosing their words carefully, as if we were all aware there was glass under the table. The waitress brought dessert. Dad asked for decaf. Mom folded her napkin 3 times before she spoke again. You know, Seraphine hasn't been herself lately. There it was. Not even 5 minutes after the chocolate mousse hit the table. I didn't say anything, just waited. She's struggling after the layoff. It's been hard. She's not applying like she should. Her confidence is low. She's been through a lot, Dad added. I looked between them. Losing a job's tough, I remember. Mom smiled soft. Yes, but this has really knocked her down. She's been talking less. She doesn't even go out anymore. She's lost her sense of purpose, Dad chimed in. It's like she doesn't know where to go from here. Then the pivot came. With all you've built, Mom began, reaching gently across the table. Maybe you could help her find that purpose again. I let her hand rest near mine. Didn't move. How exactly would I do that? I asked, careful to keep my tone even. Well, maybe she could work with you, she said too quickly. Marketing. She's so good with people, always has been. She's personable, Dad added. Knows how to light up a room. I tilted my head. I'm sure she does. Mom leaned in slightly. And it would be good for both of you to reconnect, to rebuild something. There it was again, that word rebuild, like the structure had once been whole, like I hadn't spent years scavenging for bricks just to stay upright. They kept talking. Family sticks together. She just needs a chance. You've forgiven us by becoming who you are now. That's what matters, right? I let them keep going. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react. They didn't say the other part, the real part that I had become something useful to them, that my success was now something they could lean on. It wasn't Seraphine who needed healing. It was their discomfort they were trying to fix. They wanted their daughters to be close again, not for our sake, but because it looked better on paper, because silence in a family photo hurts more when someone else is watching. By the time I got home from that dinner, the silence inside me had turned into something sturdier than peace. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't numbness. It was just done. Morning came. I made coffee, sat down at my desk in my home office. The window cracked just enough to hear the birds fight over spring. I wasn't expecting anything important in my inbox, just reports, updates, logistics. That's why the subject line hit me like it did. Family comes first or your child will pay. The sender was hidden. No reply address, no footer, nothing. Just one line in the body. You'll pay for what you're doing to your family, but not alone. Your child will suffer, too. I stared at the screen so long the letters started to blur. My hands didn't move. My chest did, tight and fast, but my fingers froze on the mouse. I read it again and again. Then I stood up, left the room, didn't even close the laptop, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the closed toilet lid, trying to breathe like Marcus had taught me during labor preparations. Slow in, hold, slow out. 6 months into carrying a child, I was being threatened. They didn't sign it. Of course they didn't. But I knew. You don't need a signature to recognize the tone of a family that sharpens their knives with guilt. By noon, my body had settled, but my mind hadn't. I called my security team and legal counsel. They traced the email through several proxies, but couldn't determine the exact source. We increased the security protocols at both my home and office. Then a message from my cousin, Delea, the one who always played neutral, even at her own baby shower when our mothers fought over which side of the family threw better events. Hey, just heard through Aunt Maggie that you refused to help Seraphine. That true they're saying you're punishing her. That you've always been jealous. Jealous of the girl who got every photo, every birthday spotlight, every unearned second chance. I didn't reply to Delea. Didn't need to. That evening, I had an event to attend. The Triangle Design Gala, One of those regional awards nights where everyone wore dark-colored dresses with expensive shoes they could barely walk in. I didn't want to go, but I'd already committed, and my company was one of the sponsors. Marcus drove. He stayed in the lobby with a client while I checked in. The woman at the front desk smiled brightly when I gave my name and handed me a packet. Inside were a program, table assignment, and keynote speakers list. I didn't expect an award. I wasn't on the list. But then the host stepped on stage. And now, he said, the 2024 Creative Leadership Award goes to Seraphine Elway. My head snapped up. There was a pause. Not applause, not yet. The room hesitated. The name felt off, like someone had missed a page. But then I saw her. Seraphine walked up from a table near the front, heels clicking, smile fixed, hair curled just right. She accepted the plaque with both hands, nodded, and took the mic. "I'm honored," she said. "This recognition means so much. My journey in design hasn't been traditional, but it's been shaped by the people who believed in me, my family, my sister. She's always been an inspiration." I couldn't move. My name wasn't mentioned as the rightful recipient, but I knew my company had donated the venue decor. My team had pitched the award structure 2 years ago. Somehow, Seraphine was being recognized for my work without directly claiming it as her own. The car ride home was silent. Marcus kept glancing over but didn't say much. At a stoplight, he finally asked, "Do you want me to pull over?" "No," I said. "Keep driving. I saw what happened. I know. Do you want to talk about it?" Not because I couldn't, but because if I started, I might never stop. 2 days later, Seraphine posted a video, tear-streaked, framed in soft light, her voice gentle, broken. The thumbnail read, "When helping family means losing them." I pressed play. "I never thought I'd have to say this publicly," she said. "But people need to know the truth. Years ago, when my little sister was struggling to find direction, I offered her my notes, my sketches, my time. I never asked for anything in return, but success can change people." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I just wanted her to have a shot. I didn't think she'd erase me." By the time the video ended, my name was trending in all the wrong ways. Comment after comment spilled across my screen like poison. "You climbed on your sister's back and now act like she never existed. Classic ungrateful sibling story. Bet she thinks money buys integrity." And the one that stopped my breath for a second. "We know who the real CEO should have been." I dropped the phone on the counter. The baby kicked hard inside me. I instinctively held my belly with one hand and braced myself against the countertop with the other. It wasn't just a lie. It was a public rebranding. She didn't just rewrite history, she sold it. An hour later, I was in my home office, laptop open, eyes dry but burning. The worst part wasn't even the video. It was the attachments she'd shared. Scans of sketches, product concepts with crude lines and sticky notes. Ones I instantly recognized because they were mine. She'd taken them from an old moleskin notebook I used to keep in my bag, the one she borrowed during a lunch visit 6 years ago, saying she wanted to look at the structure of the bag I was building. I never saw the notebook again. Now she had turned pieces of that stolen past into evidence, polished it with a sob story, and offered it to the world like a sacrifice on an altar of fake humility. And the public. They ate it up. I called my attorney. Monica didn't even greet me with hello. "I saw it," she said. "We've got everything ready. Do you want to proceed?" "Yes," I said, then paused. "No, not just that. I want something stronger than a cease and desist. Defamation suit. Maybe. But first, I want the truth to hit harder than her fiction." Monica sighed through the speaker. "We'll back you on whatever you decide, but make sure this isn't coming from emotion. I opened my secured folder. Inside were company registrations, trademark applications, time-stamped development logs, receipts from materials dating back 6 years, and the kicker, an internal podcast clip from 2020 where Seraphine, speaking casually at a networking brunch, said, "Oh, Talon, oh yeah, she's doing that car thing. Cute stuff. Not really my lane." I found the clip, saved it. Then I opened a new folder, titled it The Real Timeline. But there was more. While going through my old external drive backups, mostly out of rage, I found a scanned PDF labeled Contributor Agreement, Seraphine. I stared at it for a second, then opened it, and there it was, a contract I'd forgotten I even had, signed years ago, back when I was still operating from the garage and trying to be careful. Even with family, I had asked her to sign a contributor release when she'd claimed she had a few ideas and wanted to feel involved. She hadn't contributed anything, of course, but Monica had told me back then, document it anyway. There it was, plain as day. Her name, her signature, dated, witnessed. And this line, the contributor waives any and all claims, current or future, to product design, intellectual property, brand equity, and financial interest in the company or its successors. I forwarded it to Monica that same night, her reply bulletproof. By Thursday morning, the video was live. I didn't narrate it with fury. I didn't even speak much. The first half was just quiet time-stamped footage. Me sewing a prototype in a dimly lit garage, a spreadsheet tracking expenses, emails to suppliers with my name in the footer, legal documents, her podcast calling my company That Car Thing. The second half was the contract, highlighted, signed. I ended it with one line in white over a black screen. Truth doesn't shout, it just waits. I closed my laptop and left the office. I didn't check social media. I didn't check the news, but I didn't have to. By the time I got home, my phone had 27 missed texts, half of them from numbers I hadn't seen in years. One from my cousin, Jenna. "I saw your video. Wow, I had no idea. You were right." Another from my uncle. "I always liked you. I'm sorry we didn't ask questions." Some just sent heart emojis. Others were silent. My father didn't write. Mom didn't call, but the family group chat, which I hadn't opened in over a year, was suddenly buzzing with activity. Some were outraged, some defended Seraphine, some said I had gone too far. My Aunt Deborah messaged me privately. "They're furious, but Seraphine needed to be humbled. You didn't lie. You just finally told the whole truth." I didn't reply. Some truths don't require applause. The next morning, Seraphine posted again, hair loose, eyes red but dry, voice low. "I never read what I signed," she said. "I was just trying to be a supportive sister. I thought we were family. I guess some people take advantage of that." I watched the whole 5-minute video in silence. No direct denial, no apology either. Just calculated heartbreak designed to divide sympathy and paint me as opportunistic. And it worked for some. The internet fractured like glass. Some called her manipulative. Others said I was cold. A local columnist wrote, "Sister versus sister, who owns legacy in the age of entrepreneurship?" I turned off the notifications. There are wars not worth winning if it means staying stuck in them forever. Later that day, I told Monica to proceed with a public cease and desist clarification just to make sure the facts were on paper. But I didn't want to sue. Not yet. Not unless she kept pushing. "Sometimes," I told Monica, "peace means letting go of people who will never understand you." She gave a small nod. That evening, as twilight settled over the city and our building cast long shadows on the sidewalk, I sat in the executive lounge and drafted an invitation, launch party, private event, a new division, press invited, investors attending. Seraphine's name wasn't on the list. This time, the lights would shine on the one who actually built the stage. 2 days later, I had a baby shower to attend. My own, my best friend, Raina, insisted on throwing it, even though I tried to keep things small. We settled on a cozy venue, a little bookstore cafe in downtown Durham that smelled like cinnamon rolls and vintage paperbacks. It was perfect. Wood-paneled walls, Edison bulbs dangling from iron rods, and pastel balloons tucked into corners. Close friends from my team came, a few neighbors. Raina brought lemon bars and lavender tea. I was halfway through opening a set of swaddle blankets when I heard the bell over the front door chime. I looked up. Seraphine. She stood there in a sleek cream blouse holding a tiny gift bag with a cartoon giraffe on it, and right behind her, Mom and Dad. It was as if someone had hit a mute button on the whole room. The air turned dense. Conversations froze. Raina blinked twice, caught off guard. She looked at me for direction, but I was too stunned to give any. Mom made her way toward me with a practiced smile and leaned in to kiss my cheek like this was some kind of holiday truce. "We're here to make peace," she said gently. Seraphine followed close behind. "It's nothing big," she said, lifting the bag. "Just something for the baby." I didn't take it. I didn't say anything. I just stood. My knees didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. Maybe something in me had already split, and I was standing on the cleaner side of the break. I turned toward the small crowd of friends who'd gathered for love, not leverage. "Thank you," I said, voice steady. "Thank you all for coming. It means more than I can say." I turned back to my family, and I'd like to ask my family to leave. Mom blinked. "What?" "You've made your feelings about my life clear. You've made your lies public. I'm drawing a line right here, right now." Seraphine leaned in. "Come on, Otalin, don't make a scene. Just take the gift." I looked her in the eyes and said, calm and low, "This baby will never inherit shame disguised as love." The room held its breath. Then Raina stepped up beside me. "You heard her," she said, her voice like a bouncer's in heels. It was Mom who blinked first. She took Dad's arm and turned. Seraphine hesitated, then followed. The door closed behind them. Conversation slowly resumed. Friends reached for scones and mugs and tried to make things feel normal again. But normal had never looked this clean. Across town, in her apartment, Seraphine sat alone, staring at her phone. Open on the screen was the website for Otalin's company. The About page showed Otalin standing confidently next to one of her designs, smiling. Seraphine scrolled through the product line, then paused on the Our Story section. She read it 3 times, her expression shifting from defensiveness to something quieter. In a moment of rare honesty with herself, she whispered, "I was always jealous. You actually did it." She began typing an email, deleted it, typed again, deleted again, before finally sending a single line that was neither an apology nor an attack. The morning of the launch, Raleigh was drenched in soft golden light, the kind of morning that made you feel like something mattered. I arrived at the venue 2 hours before the event. Downtown, tucked between a restored mill and a local co-op. The space buzzed with quiet motion lights being adjusted, sound checks clicking through speakers, staff rolling out linens in company colors. The event team greeted me with polite warmth, all rehearsed and practiced, but kind. My team had prepared everything. My name was on every placard. The RSVP list sat on a tablet by the check-in station. I scanned the names quickly. Mom, absent. Dad, absent. Seraphine, of course, absent. Exactly as I'd hoped. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted closure. I moved through the backstage corridor slowly, sipping a mint tea someone had handed me. At 7 months pregnant, even walking the length of a room had started to feel like a statement. But tonight wasn't about comfort. It was about clarity. The room filled quickly, more than I expected. Press, industry leaders, local entrepreneurs I'd mentored, even a few young design students whose emails I'd quietly replied to over the years. I took the stage a minute before schedule, not because I was eager, but because I wanted to speak before the air shifted. The lights dimmed just slightly. My mic clicked on. People often ask what made me start this company. I began, steady and slow. They think it was a strategy, a market analysis, some brilliant gap I identified. I paused. It wasn't. It was rejection. A silence fell, the kind that deepens when no one dares interrupt. I kept going, voice calm, but my spine straight. The first product I ever made was mocked. I was told I was chasing nothing, that no one would ever want bags for cars. But every time someone turned their back, I turned toward the work. And here we are. I reached into my jacket pocket, felt the familiar edges, pulled out the folded card, worn now from years in a drawer. I want to read you something. I opened it slowly. It wasn't flashy, no glitter, no cursive, just a simple birthday card from my grandfather. I believe in you. Not someday, today. I looked up at the crowd. That card was the only voice I heard when everything else went silent. There was a pause, not dramatic, just full. Then I turned and walked toward the covered panel mounted on the stage wall. My assistant handed me the small remote. I clicked. The curtain dropped. Behind it, a mural. Not of my face, not of polished branding, but a mosaic of my first notebook sketches. Shipping receipts, patent filings, prototype pictures, emails, timestamps, all framed together. A wall of memory and truth. This, I said, my voice quiet now, isn't just my work. It's what I remember. I let the silence stretch one more beat. To anyone who's ever been forgotten by their own, just remember you can still build something unforgettable. The room didn't erupt at first. There was just this long inhale, a collective tightening of breath. Then they stood, applause, loud, clear, prolonged. I didn't cry. I didn't bow. I just let them see me as I had always been, unhidden. Hours later, after the crowd faded, after the last thank you was said, after I was back home and barefoot in the kitchen with the kettle hissing behind me, my phone lit up. No caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. Then I played it on speaker. It was my father's voice, raspy, a little unsteady. We didn't know you kept that note. Silence. No breath behind it. Then the beep. That was all. I stared at the phone for a long minute and whispered to the empty room. But I did, and I kept much more than that. I didn't respond to the voicemail, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I'd already said it to myself, to the child growing inside me, to the world that finally saw me, not as an echo of someone else, but as a voice of my own. 3 days passed without another word from my parents, but late Friday night, just before shutting down my laptop, I saw her name in my inbox, Seraphine, no subject line. I hovered for a second, debating, then clicked. It wasn't long. I'm not ready to say sorry, but I finally understand why you left. I didn't write back because I didn't need her to finish that sentence. Some doors don't need to slam to stay closed. Some just click shut, quiet, permanent. And that's enough. That afternoon, after the launch, after the applause, after the silence of my father's voice on the phone, I sat at my desk. The window cracked open to let in the soft creak of branches and the breath of late spring. Dusk was beginning to pour in through the blinds in stripes. gold sinking into navy, and I picked up a pen, not to write a post, not to prepare a statement, but to write a letter I would never send. It started with no greeting, just truth. You always thought I'd come crawling back. I didn't, but I did come forward. I paused, then kept writing, letting the words spill in the exact tone I'd never had the space to use with them, measured, whole, not begging. You taught me about silence, how loud it can be, how sharp, and how sometimes it's the only thing louder than your disappointment. The page filled slowly, not with blame, but with the kind of honesty that made space around itself. I wrote of the birthday they forgot, of the prototype they laughed at, of the child I now carried, and how that child would never have to wonder if they belonged. When I finished, I folded the page in thirds, crisp, neat. I didn't tear it. I didn't burn it. I slid it into a file labeled "No Longer Needed" and closed the drawer. Saturday morning, I walked into the nursery. Sunlight was dripping down the pale yellow walls. The rocking chair Marcus and I built stood by the window. Books already lined the shelf. Too many for a baby, but just right for a home. Above the crib, on a narrow ledge, was the old card, the one Grandpa Walter gave me when I turned 16, the only voice that had ever whispered, "I believe in you," when no one else had. I lifted it from the frame and read it one last time. The ink was fading, but the weight hadn't. Then I placed another frame beside it. Inside, a new note written in my handwriting for the child who was coming. You never have to earn your place here. You were born belonging. I didn't cry. I didn't need to, because some names get erased from family walls. Others become the foundation of something new. Later that evening, Marcus found me in the garage studio, sorting through old fabric samples. He sat beside me on the workbench, not saying anything at first, just watching my hands move methodically through the swatches. "You okay?" he finally asked. I nodded. "I'm not looking back anymore." He smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. "Good. There's nothing there you need." "I used to think I needed their approval," I said, setting down a piece of indigo canvas, like it was oxygen, like I couldn't breathe without it. And now, I placed my hand on my rounded belly. Now I know what matters. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Monica. Seraphine's lawyer reached out. She said without preamble, "They want to discuss a formal retraction." I sat at my kitchen counter, stirring honey into tea. "What exactly are they proposing?" "She'll publicly retract her claims about helping you develop the business, admit the contract was valid. She's offering to post a clarification video." I tapped my spoon against the rim of the mug. "Why now?" "Apparently, she's been approached for a marketing position at Caraway Industries. They're concerned about the optics after your video." I almost laughed. Caraway was one of our biggest competitors. Of course they'd be worried about hiring someone with documented ethical issues. "What do you want to do?" Monica asked. I thought about Seraphine's email. Not an apology, but a beginning of understanding. Maybe that was all I could expect. "Tell them I'll accept the retraction. No need for a public video that would just drag this out. A written statement will suffice." And Monica add a non-disparagement clause. For both of us. Both. Yes, I'm done with this story. All of it. 2 weeks later, a small envelope arrived. Inside was a check, a reimbursement for legal fees, and a handwritten note from Seraphine. I won't say I wasn't jealous. I was, but what I did was wrong. You built something real. Something I couldn't. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was honest. And honesty, I was learning, was rarer than remorse. I deposited the check and filed the note away. Not because it meant reconciliation, but because it meant the end of a chapter. The baby came early on a Tuesday morning in May. a girl with Marcus's eyes and, the nurses said, my determination. We named her Valerie, after my grandfather Walter. She didn't cry when she was born. She just looked around, taking everything in. Ready? In those first quiet moments, holding her against my chest, I whispered the promise I'd written in her nursery. You were born belonging. My parents sent flowers to the hospital. No card, no visit, just an arrangement of lilies and lavender delivered by a teenage courier who didn't know what they meant. I asked the nurse to give them to another patient. Seraphine texted a simple, congratulations. I replied with a thank you. 2 words, no history between them. Maybe that was progress. 6 weeks later, when the summer heat had settled into everything, I brought Valerie to the office for the first time. My team had prepared a small welcome, nothing extravagant, just coffee and pastries in the conference room. I sat in my chair, Valerie sleeping in a carrier on my chest, and looked around at the faces that had become more family than the one I was born into. I know some of you have been concerned, I said, about how I'd balance everything, the company, motherhood, all of it. Nods around the table, gentle smiles. The truth is, I don't know exactly how it will work, but I do know this: I built this company to last, not just for me, but for her. I glanced down at Valerie, and for all of you who believed in it when others didn't. My assistant, Jenna, who had been with me since the beginning, when the company was just a desk in a shared workspace, raised her coffee mug. To building things that last, she said. Everyone raised their cups. To things that last. As we left that afternoon, walking through the parking lot with Valerie strapped to my chest, I caught sight of our reflection in the glass doors of the building. A woman I wouldn't have recognized 7 years ago, standing taller, moving with purpose, carrying the future. I thought about my father's voice on that voicemail. We didn't know you kept that note, but I did. I kept it all. The pain, the drive, the belief, and in keeping it, I had built something stronger than rejection. I had built a life where belonging wasn't something you earned or lost. It was something you created, brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice, and no one could erase that, not even family. And that's how I learned that some names get erased from family walls, while others become the foundation of something new. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences that remind us we're never alone in our struggles. What's your take? Would you have given your family another chance or drawn a line like I did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the family that matters most is the one you build yourself. See you in the next story, where we'll explore another chapter of life's complicated, beautiful mess. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.